talk about once the decision to break down a tank or restart a tank is made, you even said that it was like, oh, okay. So then it kind of did it for you like it's done for me in the past. Did it then become joy? I get to now revisit this and make it better.
The thing about redoing the tank, yes, it was like, I mean, I've been reef keeping 36 years now.
1,000.
Feels like it. I always talk about all the gray hairs in my head are from corals and not from my 3 children, my 3 boys. But yeah, redoing the tank was a revitalization for me, reinvigorating for me. I was able to change out, not the structure is essentially the same, but there were always things that irked me from the beginning. And I go over a lot of that in the Brooklyn Aquarium Society talk, but ballpark, just like, oh, it would have been nice to move that section of reef 2 feet that way and this section that way. And the base rock of that tank is quarried limestone that weighs 150 pounds per cubic foot. So we're not talking like easy maneuvers and stuff. And so it was a matter of, it was so wonderful to be able to do that. Yeah. And then I took out probably 3 pallets of live rock. So originally the tank has 30,000 pounds of this quarried limestone reef structure. And then it had about 10,000 pounds of live rock on top of that. And, just through the years, again, this was 23 years ago of building this tank. So I pulled out about 3 pallets of the live rock. I lifted things up. There's a lot more open space.
You almost fell into it.
I did fall into it, luckily, and caught myself. Yeah, that was a near-death experience on my birth date.
Almost your birth end.
Almost my death date on my birth date. But I survived it. But just, yeah, so redoing that. And then just through the years, all the variations of, initially it was always about the corals, and then corals got to be a little bit boring, and let's see how far we can push the fish envelope. And so there was a number of years there where I had pairs of big angelfish. And then all of a sudden Australia opened up. Like all this was happening during the lifespan of this tank. And now there was all these cool corals coming out of Australia but I couldn't put them in because of my fish choices. So then it was remodeling the fish choices to put those corals in. And then just through the years, so then it just became more, after the redo also, just, I can put euphyllias back in there now, and I can put corals in that I've never had before, which is awesome. And so that's exciting for me, right? So that keeps me in the game. I think it was good for the staff that's there now, and we do have a number of younger staff, and some have been there for a while. But I think it was good for them to see the old man, shoulder and just get it done. And I mean, there was 240 something or 50 buckets of gravel and substrate and things that have accumulated in the tank through the years. All that came out. And
oh, that was crazy. Yeah. You showed in the video how you would wet dry vac, but then there was no good way to get the wet dry vac out. So you'd put a sump pump in the wet dry vac and blow it out.
Yeah. Countless times. Just
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was 7 weeks of work, no days off, and they were like 10 to 12-hour days minimum. Some were much longer because we're a public aquarium, and I had promised a
big reveal.
August. July 1st.
Yeah.
Basically, on July 1st, that tank would have some fish and corals back in it, with some notes on it saying we're renovating the tank and stuff. So it was from start to finish, it was a 7-week marathon of getting things done. A lot of lead time working up to it, replumbing systems, building systems behind the scenes to hold corals, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But it was a very intense 7 weeks, I got to tell you.
That was cool how you showed too that pipe penetration through the concrete that had been like a slow leak, and you'd cleaned it up and you shot expanding foam through it, and then you put 795 silicone
Oh,
around
the link
that.
seal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The link seals that are it's like a compression fitting that goes around your pipe inside the wall penetration. And you don't snug up 22-year-old bolts.
Yeah. You'll just break them. Yeah.
You just leave them and work
Yeah.
around. It wasn't like a major leak. So it was to stop a slow drip kind of. And there was countless things around that tank that needed. It was like a 21-year-old battleship surrounded by, in salt water. So
it's so funny though, because there was so many parallels to things that I'd done before, but just on this grand scale to where it's like, so I know, that you saw this because I saw you doing it in the video, but the time I did that to the smaller tank, it's amazing. I don't know what it is, biological material or detritus, but whenever you do this sort of hard reset on the tank, it's like it just keeps puking out detritus, and you're like, I didn't even see all this crap. Where the hell is it coming from? It's just like the rocks are puking this stuff out.
Yeah, it was mind-boggling, the amount of just, and I think I was pretty good on sand maintenance and gravel maintenance and stuff. And then it was just, shoveling all this stuff out. It was like not shoveling just sand. It was like setting concrete filled with shards of stuff. Like it was just crazy labor intensive.
Joe, what are you most excited about with the reboot? What makes you just fucking get hard?
That he didn't die when he swims in it.
The swimming in it is interesting now because for years I had this mental roadmap that I always knew where I was, and now I don't.
Yeah.
Like I turn around sometimes and I'm like, oh, dude, that's not where you are.
Don't put your foot there.
Honey, ask that guy for directions.
And but I'm enjoying putting just smaller frags back in and deciding what's going to grow and where, and placing some of the older, bigger corals back in that I still have. Doing the fish population again, really just keeping. I just put the 3 Soho tanks back in. So I was having Valonia was becoming a challenge. So they went back in to help deal with that. But like that's like by far the biggest fish that I'll be putting back in there. So I'm really looking forward to large schools of green chromis and more of a real reef looking scene of just lots of small fish. And I've got lots of, ORA bred fish in there now and all their small guys. And I'm not even a fish guy. Like I probably couldn't tell you half the names of the fish that I'm putting in, but I know I like them and I know they'll be fine.
Yeah. And know what a reef looks like.
Planting the corals and then, knowing what they're going to grow into and look like. And, and just for years, like I couldn't even grow like a green slime or acro in the tank. So for many years, there was certain corals I couldn't grow that I love to grow. So it's nice to see them growing now.
Did you ever identify why you couldn't do the green Bali slimer? Was it a fish taking it out?
No, never could idea it. And then prior to the big tank, I had these unknown nasties. I had that large stand of yellow turbinaria. It was kind of but like about 4 years ago, it started to degrade. And no matter what I did and where I placed frags of it and in the tank, I eventually pretty much lost it all.
Do you have green Bali slimer now?
I have frags of it now and it's growing. Okay. I've got yellow turbinarias back in there again and they're growing. So there was, even before like the immediate breakdown of the tank, there were corals in the last 4 years or so that I couldn't keep that I really wanted to. For whatever reason, the biome, whatever. I am struggling a little bit right now. This thing wasn't challenging enough. Because the tank was sterile. I did not put live rock back in the tank. I did not want to reintroduce anything. I did have the existing tanks above the tank separated plumbed out to be separate again. And then it was like Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams. And then it was decide like, okay, time to cross the streams. So putting those systems back on to the system definitely helped get, I was scraping coralline algae off of those tanks and throwing that around the tank. And but like no live rock really went back in 20,000 gallons. It was all sterile rock. So there's an interesting sequence of different algae growing and stuff like that. So I'm dealing with this little amphipod, this little white amphipod that eats coral, like crushes it.
Ugh.
Stony corals, LPS, SPS. I haven't seen it touch any softies yet. And I think it was always in the system, especially in the latter years of my tank, because if you don't see them, you're just watching tissue recession, a tissue necrosis. Oh, that looks like a bacterial thing. The adults get rather large, but if I'm not looking at them without my reading glasses, I don't see them. And if I wasn't looking for them on the dives, so I think they were in the tank prior to the breakdown and were some of the reasons why I was not able to keep some of these corals was I just didn't realize they were slowly getting eaten. Where like I would frag off the pieces of that were not doing well, hoping that the pieces that were left behind would just grow back again, and they wouldn't. So we're working on that guy now, but it's this white amphipod that's just voracious.
What are you doing to get rid of them?
Well, some have gotten into the main reef tank. Yeah. I initially saw them in holding and quarantine, where I started losing some corals, and I'm like, this is weird. And then again, just when you're looking at it literally from the surface, you're thinking, oh, it's tissue recession and it's a bacterial thing. And then when you really started looking, you're like, what's that little white dot? Like, and then I was up on the reef tank, on some of the holding tanks above the reef tank, and I moved in acro, and it looked like white dust falling off of it. And you're like, that was strange, and it was the babies, and so apparently, like amphipods will carry eggs with them.
Yep.
So it's not like they're gonna lay them like acro-eating flatworms and stuff. So in the holding systems, I did interceptor the regular amount, and that took care of them in holding. In the main tank, if it's a bigger colony of a branching Seriatopore or something, and I see some impact, I'll pull that coral out and dip it in Revive over 2 days. It knocks them off, and then I'll put it back in the tank. Because they don't have doesn't seem like they have a great way of relocating to another coral. If you kind of carefully, I'll carefully take that coral underwater, carefully put it in a bucket, because these guys are just so alert, and like the second they think something's amiss, they just jump off.
Yeah. And
head right for the bottom of wherever they are. And I don't have a species ID on them yet. We've got some people working on it, so I think what I'm going to have to really end up doing, especially for these tighter branched and Seriatopores and stuff, is just break them all apart into small frags, and then just plant them and let them grow back in. I have been doing some of the freshwater hosing like I used to do with the acro-eating flatworms before I broke the tank down. That definitely disrupts them and dislodges them from that colony.
The flatworms, not the amphipods.
Oh, the amphipods too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They get pissed off.
I don't have the flatworms. Again, I was really careful with that. But I think even doing that, I'm sure they'll show up. Even without the assist. But I think with doing the freshwater hosing also is dislodging some of these guys but I mean, it's unbelievable what these guys can do. It's just horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think about that's crazy. Like when you're setting up when you find yourself setting up a 20,000 gallon aquarium, but it's just you have so many specimens in there from all over the place. It's just like you're going to end up with this bullshit. It's just like Russian roulette.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't kept this, I mean, it had its huge benefits of keeping all the tanks above the reef tank active, and it had its benefits of being able to combine those two to help make my reef tank mature quicker. But I think at the same time, that's where these little dudes got in. So that's been the only drawback that I've seen so far. Because early on, I did have pretty high ammonia and nitrites when the tank was fully running at first, just from all the dead stuff in the rock, no matter how much I bleached it. So I did have to rig up a biofilter that I took bio balls from our shark tank, and got the ammonia down, and then got the nitrite down, and then it started producing nitrates. And then once I felt that was comfortable, then I was able to pull that filter off, and my nitrates have been dropping, which is good. It's just a huge balancing and massaging of how much light do you put on, because I want to keep some corals alive, because it is a public display. So a few spotlights here and there, some max spec LEDs with an anemone and some corals, and tridacna clam, but then like general lighting is kind of low. It was a really, how many urchins, thousands of snails. I mean, it was just this juggling act to make this happen and do it while it's on public display and not in your basement,
Right.
But,
right.
So there was some
talk about humility, because you're doing all this in front of the public, and it's just like, you have to put on your big boy britches for that, because and you set the deadline, and it's just like all eyes on you to get that done in time. And
then you got hobbyists complaining because they got a 50-cent size patch of cyanobacteria and they're freaking out.
No, I mean, out of the three of us, I worked on the smallest exhibit when I was at the Houston Zoo. It was a 4,000 gallon exhibit. But I did always find that funny, because you talk to hobbyists and they're like, well, why don't you do this? And you should do that. And some of it might be valid, but it's also like, Joe, in your case, it's like, and in Richard's case, the 200 something thousand gallon, and in Joe's the 20,000 gallon. It's like, oh, okay, here's the reins. You take it and you find out how easy it is to, diminish phosphate.
You go steer this freighter.
Yeah.
I remember somebody coming in and going, oh, well, you know what you need to do this? Like, you need to run carbon. Like,
yeah.
Do you have any idea of what it means to try to run carbon on a 200,000 gallon tank?
Right.
That's an insane, it's crazy. It's the amount of carbon to make any kind of dent. And then you need the budget to keep changing it once a month.
I was about to say, because like all the stuff I wanted to do to my tanks, we'd have to take it to admin, and admin was like, why this, why that? And I was a young guy. So, in order to really pass the stuff through admin, it was like, they really scrutinize you. And like you're saying with the carbon and 200, I would imagine the container you'd run carbon in would be like a 10-foot tall tower.
Well, we ended up getting some MRC things made that could either be used for carbon or for a GFO. Yeah. And they were huge. And, it was like, yeah, this is going to suck every 2 months that we change this. This is going to take 4 hours. It's going to take 5 people. And it's going to be a real pain, and it's going to be expensive. And we have to work with the engineers to bring the carbon when we need it down, and then plumb it in. And, so it's like, we had to buy $1,000 shop vac to be able to make it even doable. And, and so it's just like, no, you can't just run carbon. It doesn't,
Wait, what's that?
Work like that.
That inside joke, Joe, that one with the like, bro, do you use ozone?
Oh, ozone bra.
Ozone bra?
Hey, bra.
Hey, bra.
It's funny though, because at the same time, it is the same stuff. It's just, I think people don't catch the scale difference. I mean, there's the internal politics problems,
Exactly.
That's its own kind of nightmare. But that combined with the scale difference, it's it's different world. It's harder. It's different.
Yeah, when you're like,
Yeah.
why don't you just use carbon? And then you run the numbers and including, man hours and all this stuff. And okay, so $20,000 a year. You said we should just do carbon.
Yeah. When we, if we wanted to bump the magnesium up, 50 or 100 points, we needed 3 pallets of magnesium.
Right.
3 pallets of magnesium. Then we need a way to dose that magnesium.
Yeah.
3 pallets worth. It's just it's really cool stuff, but it can be really frustrating and hard.
Well, the good thing that is Joe's been like longtime friends with Robert Stark from ESV, who I love that company. But I mean, so he helps you figure out a lot of the chemical stuff that goes down.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I mean, my magnesium mix it's not 3 pallets, but it's still, 330 pounds of dry materials mixed up to use, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
a lot of,
a 200,000 gallon reef tank is stupid. It's a dumb idea. And it to do it right, you need like 3 people, probably 4, whose job it is just to do that tank. That's it.
right.
Because it's just so big.